consultant I was working with on another project told me about this, and it was brand new at the time. I think I was one of the first clients to use Five Dynamics. And it just sounded, so interesting. I said, yeah, I'd love to learn more about it. And I had had some not so great experiences with other typologies or personality assessments before. So I was curious. Their software is very intuitive, very easy to use. I even managed it myself, even instead of having an administrator manage it. I was the administrator, and I'm not, the most tech savvy person in the world, but it was very simple and easy to use. I think this is the most important thing. What makes it so different is it's not about personality. Okay, it's one of the big differences. It's not about personality. It's about how you show up and do your work. And there's no right and no wrong. So when you do things like DISC or Myers-Briggs, which are great tools, there's a lot of room for reflection in a way that may bring some negativity or may make people feel awkward or they don't understand, and it becomes pretty complicated sometimes, and people get really defensive. The thing about Five Dynamics is when you break it down to explore, excite, examine, execute, evaluate, it's what we all do. There's no right or wrong. Some people like to do more of some, less of the other, of higher energy. So it doesn't make anyone feel bad. And that's really what would happen, or people would become defensive, or so with Five Dynamics, it's how we do work. So there wasn't a lot of people arguing or fighting about the tool. So once you could say, hey, here's what the tool is, here's what the dynamics are, we all use these, and here's, let's share some examples of how we do it, then you could just get into, okay, how can we use this information to help us be better collaborating together, do our projects better? How can it make me more successful as a professional? So that was one of the huge differentiators. The other thing is the simplicity of it. It's so simple, people remember it. And it's also not a color or an animal, something that didn't really make sense. It's like, okay, that makes sense. I know what excite means. I know what explore means. I know what execute means. So it was something that people grasped onto, they remembered instantly, and then they could refer to it right in the first session. It seemed like they were a practitioner already. Right away, I realized this is light, this is easy, this is, people are making this part of how they do business. So it's simplicity and not being tied to your personality. Each year I'd run a high potential program, and we'd have 16 or 20 people that would be selected, and they'd work together for 6 months. And part of the working together would be they'd form small cohort teams, and they'd be given a challenge. And then at the end of the 6 months, they'd have to make a recommendation to the executive team. Now, I'd take the Five Dynamics, and first off, I would have everyone do their profile, but then I'd say, I used it to form the teams. And so I'd want all, diversity is a beautiful thing, right? But it also can cause a little frustration when you work together. So I would put, different people with high energies and low energies together. So I tried to make the best mix of different energies together. And then I would, teach them about the Five Dynamics. Then throughout the program, I would use the Five Dynamics methodology to say, okay, here's what we're going to do first. When you do any project, let's stay in the problem space. Let's stay and explore. And you could feel the energy of some people are executing. Here's the idea, or here's that. Let's stay and explore. No, you should be an explore for 3 weeks, for a month. You're still exploring. Then excite. Then let's go to excite. Who are you talking to? Who are you asking? Who are you influencing? Who are you involving? Then we would move to the phase and say, all right, so now let's examine what's the budget's going to be, what's your information, what data do you have, what's the background, why will this work, why won't this work, then what's your implementation plan and execute. Then before it would go, and let's evaluate. how are you doing? And so that was, and I carried that on throughout the years, and I think that was very, very effective. It led to better results, more inclusion on the teams, involving everybody. And I have to say, the recommendations they made, almost always they were implemented. So it was really, probably 75% of the time, the recommendations were implemented. And I think 5 Dynamics had a huge impact on the results. We have 54 brands. When I worked there, they had 54 brands, and they would acquire different wineries. And so at one point, we purchased 3 wineries in Oregon, in Willamette Valley. Now, these were 3 small wineries that had been people working there, all, in these boutique wineries all by themselves. And what we were doing is bringing the leadership together. And we're going through great change. And so the very first thing I did, got the whole group together. I had them do their 5 Dynamics, read their individual reports, brought them all together for the first time, and really got to know each other using the tool. And, so the first part is, hey, you're going to be one leadership team. So how do you understand how each other worked? How can we leverage people's high dynamics, and how can we leverage the diversity? So we talked all about them. So it was a very good way for them to quickly get to know each other, understand each other's work styles, and, just really share stories. When you use 5 Dynamics, people share personal stories, and they really talk about, this is how I like to work. This gives me energy. This excites me. And you think, oh, wow, that person could help me do this. They're excited by numbers. Good, I'm not. And so anyway, that was one part of it. But the next part was using it with change management. So they're undergoing huge change. So after we did, talk about the change curve and all that, say, okay, why don't we do this? Why don't we have all the employees take the 5 Dynamics? And so we did. We had all the employees, and we came back together. We had all their results all put together. And we talked about, as a leader, what do employees need if they're have higher energy in certain dynamics? And it was really interesting. We had I think it was 3 hours just really talking about, so, if you're high execute for the employees, you already have your resume done. You're applying for other jobs. As soon as you realize that, oh my gosh, I may be losing my job here. Or if somebody's high explorer, they want, what's the background? How did this happen? What's the strategic implications? They want the whole big picture. High excite, am I still going to be working with my friends? Who is going to be my boss? What does this mean? What does that mean for me? And then at the high examines, why? What's the details here? Why, what's all this? Where are the facts? How does this make sense? Make it logically sensible for me. And I think, as leaders, as managers, it's so important, especially going through great change, that you meet your employees where they are. What's going to make them feel comfortable? What's going to make them feel respected in this process? And with that, it was hugely successful. And every time that Oregon team, anytime anyone was doing, what are their dynamics? Oh, we got to get this person. So it becomes ingrained in the way people do business. And that's, if I go back to another differentiator, it's not a one and done situation. It's not like, oh, let's do this. Oh, that was a pretty good session. I learned about you. No, this is carried through. People have their dynamics posted. People will say, hey, you're going to execute, stop. So it becomes part of the culture. So I think of anywhere that really, since the start with all the Oregon teams, they still talk about it, and we've had many, many sessions. And once you do something like that, use it as a management tool, you could say, oh, how does this impact coaching? How does it impact giving feedback? How does it impact engaging somebody on your team? How does it impact who you choose to work together in certain projects? So it's very, very helpful. It's a very handy tool for a people manager. Here was one interesting exercise we do using the 5 Dynamics tool. Some of our salespeople had hired as salespeople, obviously, so they were hiring for a salesperson. However, their first year at the job, they were going into grocery stores, taking orders, setting up displays. It was almost like boot camp. And they were having very, very high turnover, extremely high, double the rest of the company. So what we did was did an analysis using the 5 dynamics of all their major processes. So I had the team of leaders write down, what do they do all day? In a week, what are the 12 major tasks? And then with each task, we wrote down, what dynamic are they in when they're doing this task? Well, come to find out, it was 80% examine work. And they were hiring for the profile for a salesperson, which was, high excite and high execute. So when you're high excite and high execute, you examine is what gets you really frustrated. And actually, I'm high excite and high execute, so I know that feeling. It's like, wow. And so the thing was, okay, and not only that, so that was a big realization. We knew there was some examine work, but it was all reporting and graphs and data and budget. It's like, no wonder these employees are feeling, hey, this isn't what I signed up for, moving on. So what they did, instead of change a job description or hire differently, because they wanted salespeople, they wanted to promote people, but this is where they wanted them to start. They decided to explain what that first year is going to be differently and say, you know what, here's the dynamics. You're going to be working in this dynamic and it's going to feel frustrating, and that's okay. And that's how it's going to feel. And here's what's going to happen after. And what we did was, here are some other things that could make them feel like they are executing. What can they execute on? What can they get excited? Can we have teams instead of people going out individually? So I thought that was really successful, and that helped the business a lot. Very insightful. So when you use that, and I use that a lot, having people analyze their jobs, and there's a lot of like, oh, geez, no wonder I don't feel comfortable. I'm spending too much time here. Or, oh, no wonder I love this job. It aligns. And the other thing I thought was another example, there's so many that we did, there's a senior leadership team. So there's about 60 people on the senior leadership team. And so we did everybody's 5 dynamics. And then we did a chart together. Well, most of the people were in the high examine and high execute. And nothing that's right or wrong, but okay, that's interesting. And what does this mean? What does this mean about what we're doing? Who we're, because once again, diversity. Diversity of thought. When you have people with the same dynamics, you create a tsunami, right? And so we're going fast. That's just not representative of our, employee group. And what is that lack of high explore or high excite, especially high excite? Well, both of those. High explore is strategy. High excite are people. So we're the strategic leaders leading people, and that's not our highest. So, the discussions about what can we do about this? Because a lot of times people like to promote people. Oh, you're like me. Oh, you're doing great. You're really great. You're just like me. Come on, let's move you ahead. And so there was a lot of insight into that. And I think that we broke up some people with different dynamics and said, how does it feel? How does it feel when you're in a leadership group and it's like that? And so lots of insights. We didn't do another to change it, but I'll tell you, I think there is a difference in who has been moved into different positions. So it's almost like that, the different types of leaders, it's inspiring leaders, 16 types of leaders. And, you can be a really inspiring leader and for different people in different ways. So that was another way it helped the business, I think. I'm really passionate about running good meetings and using time effectively. And as soon as I learned about 5 dynamics, I was like, this is a great tool for effective meeting management. And I think it's a great a diagnostic too for a team. So I do a lot of working with teams and helping strengthen teams. People come to me, oh, we need something's going on with our team. And so one of the diagnostics they use, let's talk about your meetings. What do your team meetings look like? And you have people break down, here's what happened. Oh, some people would say, we get in, we just do status reports, we show the graphs, we go to the debt, we look at the numbers. Other people say, oh, we just use it for time, just how are you doing? What were your successes this week? And, so that it didn't seem that the phases in the meeting were really reaching every different person. So if you're, stress and examine, and it's just all about the numbers, even getting that little bit of like, hey, how was your week? What are you most proud of taking? So And then did you get things done? Or is it just, it's this, what are we having this meeting for? Just talking, talking, talking. Are we executing? Are we getting things done? And so teaching people, and I even added it to the process of, I have a class, Making Meetings Matter, and I would add it to the process to what part of your meeting is explore. What part is excite? What part is examine? What part is execute? And then most importantly, what part is evaluate? Evaluate your meeting. How's it doing? What was great about the meeting? What would make the meeting better? And using that tool really helped the business. And I truly believe, because it helped people pay more attention, people be more part of the meeting. And a lot about the 5 dynamics and using the different parts. It's talk a lot right now, about respect, and respecting people is involving them. And so if you do something that that speaks to them, it includes them. So it's really an inclusion tool. Right now, there's so much about unconscious bias and diversity, which is wonderful that this is all spotlighted. But it's work styles. People can be so disrespected because of their work style, and that's really not okay. It's okay if somebody, we don't have to. Oh, I'm going to talk first. No. What would you like to say? How do you draw people out in a meeting who aren't speaking? And so it's all about respect. And when people feel respected and they feel comfortable and they can bring their real selves to the workplace, that's when great things happen. You do your best work when you feel, I'm comfortable. This is it. That's when the best of you comes out. So I'm a huge fan, as you can tell.